Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho and in today's video we are looking at the top transfers going into Game Week 8. In particular, we need to look at whether managers should be selling Bukayo Saka for Phil Foden and the best differentials for those teams that have the best fixtures. As always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure to drop a like and of course smash that subscribe button. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. So first up, as I mentioned, I think we need to have a conversation regarding Saka and Phil Foden. Now, of course, Saka going off in England's first game in international break. A few alarm bells about whether he is going to be available for Game Week 8. However, we have had some positive news from the England manager Lee Carsley suggesting that Saka was touch and go for the second England match, but they decided not to take the risk on him. And realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if Arteta was on the phone to Carsley telling him that he had to get him out of that England camp. He's now back at Arsenal, but I doubt we're going to get any concrete news from Arteta. Historically, he has been a menace at giving us any sort of real information. So I think we need to go into this game week with the understanding that Saka probably is fine to play based on what Lee Carsley suggested. However, I think there's a lot of managers out there, maybe with those with the wild cards still in hand, that are looking at Game Week 8 as maybe an opportunity to move away from Bukayo Saka and jump on a potential differential in the shape of Phil Foden. So the first main reason why managers are considering this is because of the fixture swing. Arsenal away against Bournemouth in itself is not too bad, but then between Game Weeks 9 and Game Weeks 11, they have Liverpool, Newcastle away, and then Chelsea away. And even though Newcastle and Chelsea have their problems defensively, it still isn't a fantastic fixture to be owning an Arsenal attacker over that period. So there is a question whether we do maybe move to a Man City midfielder in the shape of Phil Foden. Now, Wolves away with the defensive record they've had so far is an incredible fixture, better than that of Bournemouth. Then they got Southampton at home, which really does feel like the money fixture, followed by Bournemouth away themselves, and then Brighton away. And I imagine after that sort of period, managers will be looking to use their wildcard if they had it still in hand. So when we take a look at the underlying numbers, because it's clear that the Man City fixtures are the ones we want to target as opposed to the Arsenal fixtures, we need to take these underlying numbers with a pinch of salt because Foden has played hardly any minutes this season, especially when we compare it to someone like Bukayo Saka, who is just a minutes monster. Now, these are stats per 90 minutes. XG 0.38 per 90 for Saka, only 0.16 for Phil Foden. And again, when it comes to chance creation for Bukayo Saka, 0.84 per 90 compared to Foden's 0.19 expected assists. So Saka dominating in both departments and even in the big chances area. But again, we're looking at such a small sample size here with Phil Foden. We really can't be buying Phil Foden with the attention of these numbers. We are basically looking at buying Phil Foden because we know what we're getting from him from previous seasons and with the fixtures coming up. So for me, going into Game Week 8, I think if you want to go early doors to Phil Foden, it isn't a bad transfer at all. However, for me, with the way that Bukayo Saka is playing right now, the talismanic figure that he's taken upon himself in this Arsenal team, I think we probably should keep Bukayo Saka for one more game week and then look to move to Phil Foden in Game Week 9. That would be my personal recommendation. But if you want to move early to Phil Foden, I do not mind it at all because I think the general consensus will be a lot of managers moving to him in Game Week 9 regardless. So you could get that one game week in Game Week 8 where you get those real differential points if he was to start. The only thing we need to remember, we have no idea what is going to happen once Kevin De Bruyne returns to this Man City team and how that is going to impact Foden's positioning and minutes. So that's why I like waiting one more game week just to gain a bit more information regarding Phil Foden. But I do not knock anybody if they want to go early to the Man City midfielder. And let me know in the comment section, are you one of those managers that is potentially looking to sell Bukayo Saka? Next up, we need to take a look at some of the mid-price forwards as it looks like we have a lot to choose from this season. So I decided to bring up 3 mid-price forwards that I really think we need to start considering for the short or long term, depending on what sort of window you're looking at. And we've got Spurs' Solanke, Arsenal's Kai Havertz and Ollie Watkins of Aston Villa. Now, a lot of people's teams right now have got a certain structure where maybe they have Erling Haaland up top, a mid-price forward in the shape of one of these, and then a cheaper forward, maybe Chris Wood, Calvert-Lewin. So I feel like a lot of managers are actually buying into this sort of price range right now. And I see a lot of people sat there with Ollie Watkins, myself included. The big question right now is, do you keep Ollie Watkins for the next few weeks, or do you downgrade him to free up the funds to go to somebody like a Solanke or a Kai Havertz? As I mentioned, there are cheaper forwards available, but I think some managers are keeping the third spot available for those specific forwards. So right now, I think the mid-price forwards are offering brilliant value. When we take a look at the underlying numbers right now, of course, Solanke being the cheapest at 7.6 million, Havertz mid-price at 8.3, and then Watkins at the higher end at 9.1 million. Even though Watkins is leading the way in terms of underlying numbers per 90 minutes, all of them have great numbers. 0.88 per 90 for Watkins is fantastic, it's worth noting, but Havertz at 0.75 and Solanke at 0.74 aren't to be sniffed at all. These are really good numbers. And I always think with forwards like this who are playing number 9, if you can get some sort of creativity alongside it, that's just an added bonus, but you shouldn't be judging a player like this if they don't have any sort of creativity. So for example, Solanke at 0.08 expected assists, I don't really care about that. When I'm looking at forwards, I only care about whether they're getting the goal scoring opportunities in their team, and all three of these are doing that. The added bonus is that Ollie Watkins is also accumulating chances for his team, 0.21 expected assists per 90. So he is kind of doing everything right now in that Villa team. Solanke being just more of a goal scorer. However, we've seen him be a creator in game week 7. So I think these underlying numbers may change over the coming weeks for, in particular, Dominic Solanke. We can see the big chances, kind of reflective of the expected goals. Watkins leading the way at 1.68 per 90, and the trend continues in expected FPL points and actual FPL points per 90 minutes. So, of course, fixtures are king. And we really need to take a look at what is coming up for these particular options. So the one I want to draw your attention to right now is going to be Arsenal, because I would argue they have the trickiest run of fixtures, hence what we spoke about with Bukayo Saka. Bournemouth away for Havertz is not a terrible fixture at all. But then coming into Liverpool at home, Newcastle away and Chelsea away, I think firstly, if you're one of those managers that owns Kai Havertz, you can absolutely keep him for one more game week if you want to. And then maybe look to pivot to someone like a Dominic Solanke after game week 8. With someone like an Ollie Watkins, I would argue that the next 2 fixtures are very, very good for him. And then after that, they do start to take a slight turn. So I don't think the sale of Ollie Watkins right now is desperate. I think Havertz is probably more of a pressing sale than that of Watkins, because game week 9 in particular is a great fixture for Watkins at home against Bournemouth. But again, with those fixtures turning, and when we see the Spurs fixtures, they continue to be good for a bit more of a longer term perspective. So I think the big question right now is, if you're not sat with Dominic Solanke, should you be selling Havertz or Watkins to get to Dominic Solanke this game week? Now, I'm a manager right now that's sat there with Ollie Watkins, and I personally think that the Fulham game away is going to be a very tricky fixture. I actually think Villa might lose that game. And I look at something like Spurs at home against West Ham, and I do think there is an opportunity for Spurs to score a few goals in that game. Palace away is equally not as good as Bournemouth at home for Ollie Watkins. And then, of course, Villa at home and Ipswich at home. So to conclude, I think if I was picking a forward right now, it would be Dominic Solanke. I think the price point is fantastic, frees up funds in the squad, and also the underlying numbers are good, and Spurs are scoring goals, whatever you think about them. If I own Kai Havertz, I probably would keep for one more game week and then look to pivot to somebody like a Dominic Solanke in game week 9. And if I owned Ollie Watkins, even though I think Fulham is going to be a very, very difficult game, unless you don't need to free up the funds, I'd probably keep Watkins for 2 more game weeks and then look to pivot to someone like a Dominic Solanke in game week 10, where even though they're playing against one another, I'd much rather have the money in the bank and the home fixture rather than being away followed by Liverpool away in the following game week. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I'll be really interested to know if forwards are definitely offering value this year. So last up in terms of the specific players, I just wanted to do a very quick section on the Game Week 8 differentials, because there are a couple of interesting picks on this list. Now, if you are part of the FPL community and you are in it every single day, you might be quite surprised that Brennan Johnson is appearing as one of those differentials going into game week 8, because he has been spoken about a lot in videos, but only 5.5% owned is a lot lower than probably you expected. I was expecting that to be around 15% based on how popular he has been in FPL circles. And when we take a look at the underlying numbers for Brennan Johnson, I really do think he is a differential that we absolutely can consider as a pick. 0.48 expected goals per 90 is great. 3.66 shots per 90, and it's worth noting pretty much all of those coming in the box. They're not speculative efforts like we see of that of Bruno Fernandes. These are really good quality shots that he is taking. And in terms of the expected FPL points and actual FPL points, yes, he is slightly overperforming, but even at his price point of 6.6 million, if he can deliver 5.5 points per game, that is a great result for FPL managers. And we spoke about the underlying numbers and now the fixtures of Spurs when we spoke about Dominic Solanke. I think Brennan Johnson is a great buy in game week 8 for long term in your teams. You don't have to worry about wildcarding him out. He is a great pick in your teams, so I have no arguments with him. In terms of Bruno Fernandes, slightly more controversial. The reason why I've included him in this list is because Man United's fixtures start to turn for the better now. If you are brave enough, Brentford at home, West Ham away, Chelsea at home, Leicester at home. Yes, you'd argue maybe West Ham away, Chelsea at home could be a little bit indifferent, even Brentford, but there's no doubting that the long-term fixtures of Man United are very, very good. And really, the only player I could trust is going to be Bruno Fernandes. Now, at 8.2 million, can I honestly sit here and tell you to buy Bruno Fernandes? Probably not. I'd much rather have Brennan Johnson at nearly 1.52 million cheaper and spread the funds elsewhere in the squad. I think with Bruno Fernandes, if you want to be the guy to buy him, you absolutely can do so. But I'd rather see a little bit more from both him and from the manager and the team before even considering spending 8.2 million on him. And I have no confidence in the minutes of Garnacho, even though he would be a great pick. And you can see in the underlying numbers, they're not too bad, but really not at the level that I would expect when I'm paying 8.2 million for a player. Finally, Delap of Ipswich, a player that is getting a lot of spoken about. 5.6 million, 5% owned. We spoke about the team structures right now of Haaland, mid-price forward, and then the cheaper forward. Maybe Delap could be that man. Everton at home, Brentford away, then Leicester at home, followed by Spurs away, which you absolutely could bench at this price point. And the underlying numbers are not bad considering he is playing in an Ipswich team. 0.27 expected goals per 90, 1.83 shots per 90 isn't amazing. I would like to see a bit more, but end of the day, Ipswich don't generate many chances as a team. And he's actually overperforming his underlying numbers. But if you are looking for a cheap enabling forward, with the absence of João Pedro right now, and maybe not the funds to get to a Chris Wood or a Calvert-Lewin, I really do like Delap as a pick if you are looking to save some funds in your Game Week 8 teams. But to conclude, I think Brennan Johnson is the real standout differential that you can bring into your teams that adds real FPL value. Let me know if any of these are on your radar. Are you brave enough to buy a Man United midfielder or attacker? So last up, I wanted to bring up the Game Week 8 predicted points, because when we're looking at captaincy, we need to understand who is the man to go for. And as you can see on this list here, there's only one standout option for captaincy, and that is going to be Erling Haaland with 7.5 predicted points. Of course, playing away against Wolves, which is a great fixture in itself, and the way that Wolves have been defending over the last few weeks, you would expect for Haaland to end his blank that he's had recently. And I think he is absolutely outright the best captaincy pick for your Game Week 8 teams. But if you don't own Erling Haaland, where else can you go? Well, both Salah and Jota appear in. 6.8 predicted points for Salah, 5 for Diogo Jota, which is quite interesting considering they're playing at home against Chelsea. But we need to remember, no Cucurella and no Wesley Fofana due to suspension. I think that improves the Liverpool attack more than what we first perceived, and I think it slightly lowers Chelsea's expectations in that game. And for that reason, I do think if you need to go for an alternative captain, Salah, if you own him, is not bad at all. Coming up against most likely Viega, who was a good defender, but very unproven, I think Mo Salah could get the better of him in that specific fixture, just with the experience that he does have. If you're looking for a real crazy differential, I think someone like a Dominic Solanke could be the one to go for. Yes, he hasn't really been bagging loads of goals, but I do think against his West Ham team, there is the opportunity to do so. But as you can see with the predicted points, Erling Haaland is head and shoulders above everybody else. And let me know in the comment section, who is your top Game Week 8 captain? So that's going to wrap up today's Game Week 8 transfer picks video. I really hope it's provided some value, guys. Let me know in the comment section, who are you planning on buying, or are you maybe rolling the transfer this week? As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and smash the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.